Hey, how's it going, guys? And welcome back to yet another episode of Real Talk TV. As always, I'm your host, Lionel Wright, aka the Black Hawaiian. And, as always, guys, like I like to say at the beginning of the shows, I'm always looking for different people to talk to. We're looking for promoters, coaches, fighters, anybody that's involved in any capacity of the combat sports industry. And, like I say too, guys, if you have somebody that you are interested to know more about, hit me up on Facebook, Real Talk TV, and let me know who you want me to interview, all right? With that being said, guys, we're going to jump into our next guest right here, guys. And this guest right here, I've actually known his brother for a while, heard about him, met him when he came to Hawaii, and this guy's actually done a lot of great things. So with that being said, guys, I want to introduce you to Joseph Solis. How's it going, my man?
Good, doing real good.
All right,
Thanks
so
for
first of
having
all, thank you so much for making time and coming out and seeing us.
My pleasure.
All right, and we're going to jump right into this, all right? So pretty much Real Talk TV is all about finding out about who you are as a person and kind of, finding out your beginnings, your humble beginnings. With that being said, what is your full name?
My full name is Joseph Arsenio Rosal Solis.
All right.
Yeah, I was named after my grandfather, actually.
Okay. Oh, very good. Very good. All right. So you're born and raised
in the Philippines. I was born there, and in 1970 moved to Hawaii.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you were born there, and in 1970 you moved to Hawaii.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were born.
I was born in the Philippines.
No, what year?
Oh, 65.
Okay, I was trying to figure it out. Like, okay, you're
showing my age.
Yeah. Okay, and of course, I can't go past this without mentioning your brother. So everybody kind of knows when they hear your last name Solis. I'm sure everybody asks if you're related to Tony.
Exactly. Everywhere I go, it's like, are you Tony's brother? So yeah, I'm his older brother, from a different radio station or TV station, but. Yeah. It's my younger brother.
Oh, very good. Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, Tony, I've known him for a while. He's been a good mentor for me in the media industry. I was doing some radio and television prior to this, and I always talk to your brother, and he really helped me out a lot. So, and he always told me about, hey, you're into mixed martial arts. You got to meet my brother. And I was like, okay, cool. And he told me, you're in the mainland, and so I kind of thought that I'd either one, never meet you, or two, I guess when you would come on vacation or something, that I'd meet you through him. And lo and behold, we met, but through other channels, So you were born and raised in the Philippines. You came to Hawaii back in the 70s. And so what elementary did you attend when you were here?
Well, I started off at Kipapa Elementary.
Oh, okay.
Then that was for kindergarten. And then we moved to Wahiawa, and I went to 1st to 3rd grade at Ka'ala Elementary, and then 4th grade through 6th grade, I went to Mililani Waiena.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. So during those elementary years, were you involved in any type of sports?
I started Shotokan karate when I think I was about 10. My mom sent me and my brother and a couple of our cousins to Rec Center 1 in Mililani, and it was actually, my instructor there was a lady named Rosalie Luna.
Oh, okay.
And she trained us all the way up till about brown belt. I stayed with them till about, I think it was about 16 years old. And then she moved to the Big Island with her kids, and I stopped for a little while till I moved back to the mainland.
Oh, wow. So your very first sports was martial arts?
Yeah, soccer and martial arts.
Okay, soccer. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. So middle school, where did you go for middle school?
I went to Wheeler Intermediate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So with the military.
Yeah, everybody at that time, there was only that either Wheeler or Wahiawa Intermediate. And so Mililani, if you lived in Mililani, you went to Wheeler.
Oh, okay.
And if you lived in the Wahiawa area, you went to Wahiawa Intermediate.
Oh, wow, okay. What kind of sports were you involved in back then?
Same thing. I played soccer, and I did karate. I did a little boxing before that with my dad and one of my uncles who trained in Wahiawa. He was a pro by the name of Freddie Nazareth.
Okay.
So him and my dad, Ismail, they on the weekends would, hey, come here, boy, let me show you some stuff. So we would box a little bit that way. But mostly, I was more interested in soccer.
Yeah. Okay, wait. So Are you telling me that you and your brother took martial arts classes together?
Yeah, we started
Wow.
together, and him and my younger cousin were actually the way they grouped us was they put the younger boys in the front and then put us in the back. So I would be in the back, and we would all get scolding because he would play around, and we'd end up doing more push-ups or more sit-ups because they would goof around and the instructor would catch them. So we would get mad, and when it came time for sparring. That's when we get back at him. But he hasn't changed. He's still the same, same attitude, everything. So,
That's funny.
But yeah, we used to get into a lot of trouble because of him.
Oh, wow. So whatever you do, don't mess with Tony, all right, if you see his brother. Yeah. Wow, that's pretty cool. So now, coming into high school, you were doing still martial arts?
Yes. I
And
was still going.
playing soccer? Mm-hmm. Wow, that's good. All right, so, that's actually good. You had karate, and me, myself, too, when I was younger, I took, I think back then, in the 70s and 80s, I think the first martial arts everybody took was karate, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that was pretty.
You go to the shopping centers and you did demos with your school. You'd they didn't like the tournaments they have now. They didn't have back then. It was just you just called out the other schools and say, hey, I like my boys spar with your boys. Mm-hmm. And you guys would spar, and it was old school with no gear, no.
Just the gi.
Just the gi, cup, and mouthpiece.
Yeah. Wow, that's very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so now when you get out of high school, what do you do out of high school?
I joined the Air Force.
Oh, okay.
Did the Air Force thing, and they actually sent me back here to Hawaii. So I was here for most of the tour, and I ended up coaching Mililani High School in soccer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was the head coach for, what year was that? 86, 87, and 88, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
And that's when I got bit by the teaching bug. You start to teach, and yeah.
Okay, so when do you move to the mainland?
Right after that, I moved to San Francisco.
Okay.
Stayed there for almost 5 years. We opened up a martial arts school there. I got a black belt under a man named Paul Silva, and it was in a form of Shaolin Kempo, which is or American Kempo from Ed Parker. He was a black belt under a guy named Steve Labounty, and so I went and trained there. Got a black belt from him. Opened up my own school in San Rafael, California. Taught there for about 4 years. And then one day my mom calls and says, hey, we're going to go Vegas. Come meet us in Vegas. It was 4th of July weekend. So I flew out to Vegas, met with them there. We did the whole gambling thing, touring around. And she tells me, oh, me and your dad, we're going to move Vegas. So why don't you move here with us, So, okay. So I went home and I closed shop. I closed up the house, moved the family up to Vegas. And then they called me and said, oh, we changed our mind.
Oh boy!
So, but I was there. So, well, let's see what happens. So, I put roots down, and we stayed there for 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so now while you were in Vegas, you're still teaching Kempo.
Yes.
Okay.
I started teaching Kempo, and then I actually, the year before we moved, I was in San Francisco at Reardon High School, and I had a friend that was from a different style. And so we talked, we were hanging out, and he introduced me to their grandmaster, which was Adriano Imperato, Sergio Imperato. So I met him, and they felt like a real family. So I started working out with them a little bit here and there. And when I moved to Vegas, my neighbor was a 5th degree black belt in Kachi Kembo.
Wow.
So I started training with him, and next thing you know, that I switched over. I started training with some of the grandmasters, Max Togisala, Ted Sotelo, and I got to meet a few of the other ones that I knew from. In fact, I ran into one of the grandmasters that I should have taken from when I was in high school, but I was too busy being a kid and goofing around, and his name was Sixto Ramos.
Wow.
And so I would run into him up in Vegas too at our gatherings. Mm-hmm. So I just stuck with it, and that's where I've been ever since. I ended up with my instructor is actually Ted Tabura, who passed away a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. I also I'm very close with Bill Ryusaki, who's still teaching up in California, and Bill Sills, who's also up in Vegas.
Yes, I heard
So,
sales
yeah.
before. Okay. Wow. So now, how does the whole mixed martial arts thing work into what you're doing?
Well, Kaju Kempo is actually the first American mixed martial arts ever.
Okay.
It was created in the 40s, and they took karate, jiu-jitsu, Kempo, Kung Fu, American boxing, Eskrima. They blended everything together. They took about the five founders took about 2 to 3 years, and didn't work. They just practiced every day to combine everything to make it into a solid martial arts for defense. And so that's, nowadays you go to different coaches for jiu-jitsu, for, wrestling, for boxing or whatever. But these five founders had the foresight to say this is all that you need in order to survive on the streets.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now you're teaching in Vegas. And when do you start coaching like fighters, like the guys who start fighting in
It was
different
actually,
events?
it was an accident. I had a black belt named Stan Olivar, and he was a bartender, and he was big and macho. And one day he calls me up and he says, "Hey, Sifu, I got offered to fight in the World Extreme Championships." I said, "All right, what is that?" And he says, "It's MMA." I go, "Oh yeah, I remember because a few years ago when I was still living in Hawaii, in Vegas, in California, UFC 1 and 2 came out, and Kimo Leopoldo was fighting, and he's our high school classmate."
Oh, it's your classmate.
Yeah, from high school.
Wow.
And I remember he played actually soccer with Tony,
Okay.
and so I remember that, and I was watching, and I was married at the time, and I told my wife then, I said, "I think I want to try this," and she's like, "I don't think so, because we're not gonna tolerate you, running off and training and stuff like that." So I never did it, but when my student was saying he wanted to do it, I was like, "All right, let's go figure this out." So I ended up at I had a friend that did tattoos, and he introduced me to this other kid that at the time was training with the UFC fighters. And so he brought me in. We went to Dana White's gym, the personal gym where the actual trainer, the fighters would train. And I started picking their brain. I started watching and learning and talking to a few of them. Alex Karalexis was a big influence on me at the time, and he was from the first UFC house that they had. And he was training the boys at that gym. So I'd go in and I'd talk to him, and then he'd show me what they did, and I would kind of take a look at what we did in the martial arts and combine it, figured out, okay, well, that can be worked on with this, that won't work, this won't work, this will. And so we started incorporating the two together. And so we ended up in Oklahoma City, and we trained for a fight. And at the time, I didn't know the game. So when we brought Stan there to fight, I didn't know, how to negotiate anything. I didn't know how to ask the right questions. All I knew was that we were going there to fight. And we ended up fighting a guy that was the Oklahoma favorite. And they were bumping him, to try to get him up to the next level. So they were padding his record. And they brought in Stan, and this guy's like a 7-fight professional at 6'8", 245 pounds.
Cool.
Stan is 5'10", 235. And he never had an amateur fight in his life, and they threw him in there. And, of course, we got smashed. So that's when I decided, okay, if we're going to do this, I really need to learn the game.
Figure it out. Yeah. Wow.
And so with that being said, all the amateurs that we started to train, that's where the passion for me was educating them and getting them to understand what the real game was about, how to train properly and all that to get to the next level.
Okay. So my next question is now, so how did you meet with Deutsch Pool?
It was a man named Joe Hanlon, actually. He contacted Joe Hanlon, who was a partner of mine at the time. He was taking care of, and it sounds kind of funny this way, but he was taking care of all the non-Polynesians.
Okay.
And he said, because you have a tie to the Polynesian people, being from the islands and everything, they tend to listen more to you. He said, I got this kid that I'd like you to take a look at, and you tell me if he's worth us taking as part of our team. So I saw some videos, and I talked to him a few times, and next thing you know, he said, he's asking me, will you please coach me? And I said, well, I'm a small-time coach. There's a lot of big names out there. And he says, but it feels right. You haven't. You're the first one that's ever told me, "Oh, that technique you're using is junk." And I said, "Well, I'm not going to lie to you." He said, "Yeah, but that everybody else has told me that's a great technique, and it's been all yes men." And I said, "Well, with the Islander people, no one's going to sit there and let you, just." They're not going to ride your coattails and just tell you how great you are. They're going to tell you the truth. That's just how we are.
Yeah.
And that's how we started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So Deutsch Pu'u, a professional fighter coming out of Hawaii, and actually he was fighting in Vegas, right, for a while.
No, he was fighting overseas in Germany and internationally, but only in boxing.
Oh, okay.
So when he came to me, we incorporated the kicks, the knees, elbows, and then we started the groundwork with him.
Wow.
And so his big passion was more of the kickboxing. So we went the K1 route with him. So we kind of cut our teeth together in the business, negotiating, finding out all the information we need to make him successful in camp, finding training partners for him, sponsors, all that stuff. And that's how we ended up going to Budapest, Hungary, to Russia.
Wow. Yeah, because I remember seeing that you guys were competing worldwide, but
Yeah.
and in the whole K1 thing. So, wow, that's excellent. So now, besides Deutsch, I mean, you've had other fighters as well that actually have been fighting in the local circuits.
Yes, I've had a couple. I have this one girl that she started with me and earned her black belt in Kajikembo through me. 5 years training. Then she started fighting MMA. We actually took her to her first MMA fight in Kauai under Ainofia. And she ended up being number 5 in the world for a while, Lynn Alvarez.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but she's moved on. She's moved on to bigger things. She's got a whole team that takes good care of her. She still calls and says, "How are you doing?" Ask for advice here and there, but she's really grown up. I'm real proud of her. She's doing real well there.
Wow.
I have another guy named Sammy Collingwood out of Alabama, and he ended up going to Strikeforce.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he went to Strikeforce for a little while. We fought him in an amateur event in Vegas. It was his last amateur fight. It was against a guy named Tomislav Lorber. He's like a strongman competitor.
Oh, okay.
He was on the fast track to the UFC. I heard that they were waiting for him to win a couple more fights, and then they were going to start putting him into the UFC fights. Like a 6'8", 300-pound giant. Oh. Smashing people in the first 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And Sammy's about my height, 5'10", 5'11". He weighs about 235. And we went out there and he knocked him out in the second round. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was a good time.
Yeah, well, that's a good story.
Yeah.
All right, so you mentioned earlier about Ainofia in Kauai, which is with Vance Pasqua.
Right.
And so Vance is actually Kaju Kembo as well?
Yes, he is. He's under Grandmaster Kosaka out of Kauai. I think last year he got inducted into the Black Belt Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow.
So he's a very reputable black belt out there.
Yeah, and definitely is a great black belt and also a good promoter out there in Kauai. So
very good.
Wow, it's good to mention. And then, so with the whole Kaju Kembo thing, I remember back in the day, they used to have a lot of those tournaments before over at Lanakila.
Yeah.
Did you ever participate in those?
No. Back I was mostly Shotokan until I went to the mainland.
That's right.
So I didn't really get to participate in those fights. But we had some good gym wars and some good fights around the United States when I moved up because, the instructors would, from the style that I was in at the time, would other schools would call, "Hey, we're in San Francisco, come down, bring your boys," or, wherever we'd fly out a few guys and, you would, they say it's controlled contact, but, it never was.
Yeah, right. Control chaos.
Yeah.
And the reason why I was mentioning like that, the whole like Lanakila thing is because one, when you talk about like the UFC, there was a fighter that became a champion because of Kaju Kembo or Kempo, which is Chuck Liddell. Yeah. And so his instructor, John Hackelman.
Yes, under Walter Godin.
Yeah.
From Walter Godin to John Hackelman.
Yeah.
All the way down to Chuck. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember I was going to ask if you knew John Hackleman?
I met him a few times, Chuck a few times. I met Grandmaster Godin more times than those two.
Right.
You know, at the Gathering of Eagles in Vegas. He would come up to see Joe Imperato,
Yeah.
and you know, very colorful, you know, man. He was very, very entertaining. John Hackleman, when I met him, was more on the serious side.
Yeah.
You know, very, very quiet, very serious, very skilled.
Yeah.
You know, and then of course you got Chuck, who's up in the. Everybody knows Chuck and sees him, and you know, with him, I think is what you see is what you get. You know.
Yeah. Well, just the fact that he has that tattoo on his arm that says Hawaiian Kempo.
Yeah.
So, you know, and a lot of people like saw that on Chuck Liddell and be like, oh wow, he has some Hawaii ties, and so a lot of people don't know that John Hackleman was his Kempo coach, and then his jiu-jitsu coach was John Lewis, another guy from Hawaii.
Another of my classmates.
And your classmate.
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, he's Tony's classmate.
Yeah.
That younger than I am, but up in Vegas too. He was off of Sahara and Arville is where his school was.
Wow. And that's one of the things I kind of wanted to point out is that, you know, no matter where you go, when you're from Hawaii, you tend to run into, you know, Hawaiians all over the place. So, I mean, I kind of wanted to see if you guys kind of knew. And I didn't ask you earlier, but I was kind of sure, being in Vegas, that you would probably know who John Lewis was.
Yeah. Actually, my memories of John Lewis is he was a dancer.
Yes.
You know, he would carry his big. Now I'm really dating myself, but he'd carry a big roll of linoleum on his shoulder.
Yeah.
With his radio, and then they would stop at McDonald's, put it out, and they would do their break dancing.
Yeah.
And the last I heard was he turned professional in New York as a dancer.
Yeah.
And then from there, he ran into Gene LaBelle.
Yeah.
And he became one of Gene LaBelle's 5 or 6 black belts.
Yeah.
You
No,
know?
exactly.
Yeah.
And he went on to do great things.
Yeah.
He became a promoter and everything.
Right. Yeah.
All right. You know, so hey, we've learned a lot about you, I'd say. So besides, you know, you being a coach, you know, and have you done anything else in the industry?
No, that's pretty much. I mean, I've helped promote. There's 2 companies that were on the East Coast or Midwest. One was Combat Sports Elite, owned by a man named Dexter Hammond, who passed away a few years ago. But we'd go fight in Alabama, and I would actually pull talent from the West Coast for him.
Wow.
You know, and so that's how I got more into the game of knowing a lot of these fighters from the East Coast or the Midwest. That a few of them actually went and made it a little bit bigger in the game. And then the other one was Warfare Extreme.
Oh, wow.
And Michael Grimm owned that company out of Kansas City, and I was actually his, same thing, I was his talent manager. I would find West Coast talent and send it to him, and it was a great job for a while. I worked out of the house for about 3 years.
Wow.
And we would throw fights. The biggest fight we were going to try to throw was during Sturgis.
Okay.
It didn't work out.
That would be cool. But.
Yeah, they didn't want to license it with all those
with all those bikers and alcohol. I could imagine.
So,
all right, so you know we're just about at the end of the interview, and I guess one of the last things that I wanted to ask you is that you know if you could talk to the future fighters coming out of Hawaii, you know what kind of words of wisdom would you have for them?
Basically, I would say don't be in a hurry to become a pro. Go in there and take your amateur fights, get 15, 20, 25 amateur fights, and really learn. Don't worry about the wins and losses. The wins will come as you start to get more experienced. When you become a pro, your record counts. As an amateur, all they ask you is how many total fights did you have. They don't care about your wins and losses. So take your time, learn your craft well, learn to be a good pro in and out of the ring before you move up to that level.
All right, sounds good. Okay. So, hey, thank you so much for coming on and spending time with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. And, you know, guys, as always, if you want to find out more about Real Talk TV, you check us out on Facebook. And also, Joseph, you have a Facebook as well?
Yeah, it's, I think it's Seafood Joseph at Facebook. Yeah.
All right, so, you know, go check him out as well. And, you know, like I said, we're at the end of another great episode. Thank you so much again for coming out. And if you guys want to find out more about Real Talk TV, or if you want to make a suggestion on who we should bring on next, be sure to drop us a line over there on Facebook. Until next time, thank you very much. Aloha, and have a great night.